I'm here today with Brent of August Burns Red to talk about the new record Death Below of March 24th on Sharp Tone Records. How are you doing today?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for taking the time to come on the channel to talk about the band, the record. And right off the bat, let me ask you this. Is this the darkest album you guys have ever released?
Yeah, I think so.
Where did that darkness come from? What inspired that darkness?
I think that um it just kind of came about naturally. You know, we are a lot of us are fans of I like to call it maybe like black metal light kind of stuff, like your Deaf Heavens and things like that, you know. And so we listen to that stuff. We've incorporated a little bit of it in the past, and then you know, JB wrote the track, The Cleansing. I think that was one of the first tracks to come out for this. And we were just like, this is awesome. We can probably write, more material like this. And then the idea to make at first an EP that was going to go from start to finish with no stops. That was how Death Below kind of started. And then we just had so much material that we ended up just making it a full length album. But yeah, I mean, it's darker in tone. And I remember like specifically, I was talking to Jake and I do the vocals, and I was just like, he's like, man, we got to incorporate like some more positive thinking into some of these songs. And I'm just like, have you heard the material? I was like, I'm like, somewhat the material dictates the lyrics and vice versa. So, I don't think the lyrics are like dark or scary by any means, but there's definitely darker undertones throughout the record. And we obviously try and have everything resolve into a normal, positive manner on this record, just like normal. It's just kind of who we are as people. But yeah, it just came about kind of naturally. And yeah, it went from there.
Everybody just sounds so pissed off on this record. Like the sound is aggressive, is intensive.
Right.
The vocals are aggressive and intensive. Even the clean vocals feel super intimidating and intensive. At least they feel like organic in terms of the emotion that they carry. It's just an album that just has the intensity level turned all the way to 11.
Yeah, it is an intense record, and it's a dense record. Like it's not I've seen some people do like first reaction videos to like our song Reckoning, and it's like this is like that's not at all what these songs and what this album is. Like you're not going to listen to this record once and be like, I got it. Like it's dense, it's very intense, and that's just kind of how we designed it. We wanted it to be like an album. Our fans are our age, in their 30s, a lot of them, and so they grew up listening to records from start to finish, and so did we. And that's kind of how we wanted this album to be. And I remember talking about that at first and just being like, is this a good idea? Like in the days of Spotify, where everyone has such short attention spans and just wants stuff to be on shuffle, like, is this a good idea? And we made the record how we wanted to make it, and we'll see if people agree with us.
You'll see if it's a good idea or not later on.
Yeah, right.
Outside of the darkness and this intensity, is there something musically that separates this album from Guardians?
Yeah, it's way more progressive. Guardians was our most formulaic album, and that's just what we wanted to do with that record. We wanted to focus on having catchy parts that maybe got stuck in your head, and and then this record, we went back to more of a progressive style, similar to like Rescue and Restore and things like that. And it came out just even more progressive. Like it's definitely the most progressive record I think that we've had. It's a lot of non-repeating parts, odd time signatures. It's like I said, it's a dense listen for sure.
Did these changes, both on the musical side and then on I'm going to call it atmosphere for lack of a better term, in terms of how the album feels, were these by design, or was the process pretty organic and you kind of just found yourself in it, and then it's like, well, now we're here, might as well just go all the way?
Yeah, we did just kind of find ourselves in it, I think, because like I said, we were doing that whole EP idea, And like that was just kind of how it was gonna, come about. And then we were just like, okay, now we're gonna keep going with this. So it was pretty organic. I think usually once we have like 2 or 3 songs done with the record, we kind of know what vibe we want the record to have. But there's never like a conversation where we sit down and say like, okay, this is the plan for this record, like this is exactly what we want to do for this album. That's not really how we operate. The songs are difficult to write, so usually it's kind of just like, all right, we wrote 12 songs, here they are, they're all on the record, because each of these took like 2 months to write, and we don't have time to write more. So that's usually kind of how things work. But yeah, we like to let things come out pretty organically.
So when I look at this album and you use the word dense, I agree with you. It's a very dense record, but it's a very cohesive and balanced album from beginning all the way to the end. Maybe that density also adds to that cohesiveness that the record has. When you guys are putting an album together, how much of the individual songs impact the overall feel of the record, and how much of what you want at a certain point, the feel of the record to be, impacts the individual songs?
The feel of the record, I think, can impact individual songs for sure, because you don't want to have this like random standout like thing that's completely out of left field in an album, in our opinion. I mean, maybe some people like that, but when we think about an album, we think about it as a whole, and like we aren't out here writing singles that are going to be on the radio. So for us, it's all about being the most cohesive album that we can make. So the album definitely impacts, I think, the songs. Maybe in the very, very beginning, the songs kind of point the direction the album's going to go. But once you get into writing, 5, 6, 7, 8 tracks, like that's when the sound of the album starts to dictate how the rest of the record is going to go.
And how has that songwriting process has been for you guys? You guys have a very deep discography. So how much have you seen an evolution in that songwriting process from the beginning to now?
Well, this record was really different, just because of the whole pandemic thing. We couldn't really get together too much. My wife was pregnant at the very beginning of the pandemic, so we were just like, thank you. We're just like, what happens with babies right now? Oh, so like, we didn't know how things were going to go, so we kind of, things were done separately. Like we recorded this album in 4 or 5 different parts, which is very different for us. Usually we get all the material together and then we go into a studio for about 2 months and then we record it all. Whereas this one, it was just like, all right, we got 4 songs done. Let's go record the guitars and bass for them. And then we'll do some fake drums for them so everyone can kind of get the vibe. And then Matt can write real drums to them. And then we go do another couple, and then we go do another couple. And then finally in early 2022, we just said like, hey, time to just finish this thing. So we took 2 months in the studio, did all the vocals, did all the remaining drums and all the extras like ambiance and noise and stuff like that. So it was definitely a different writing process for us, because like I said, usually we have the material done and we just step into a studio and we just do it all at once.
When you have very often, I should say, when you have an album that is this dense, that has this much darkness in it, that has this much intensity, it's very easy for the lines to be blurred and for it to be really murky at times, and hard to see the definition of all the different elements, either be vocal elements or sound elements. This record has great definition within that thickness that it has. Does that come from the production behind the album and that more modern touch that you wanted to give to perhaps an old school approach?
Yeah, I mean, the mix is where that all comes out, and we are extremely involved in the mix, and the mix for this record took forever, like months, because we wanted it to be right and we wanted it to be good. And we even have like a different mix and master for the vinyl, because we were like, this will sound better on vinyl this way. So like we took a long time with that, and that's all in the mix. That's all just making sure all of the tones are really definitive and have their own sound that stands out from other stuff, and the bass pops. I think when you get into like some of the lower tunings, like your drop A's, your A sharps and things like that, that's when like things get muddy. And, you know, our goal was to not have that be the case. We wanted the bass to be able to stand out and be clear and be heard. And so it was a big, long process of doing that. You know, like I said, we took months to mix this record.
The baby was born by then, I assume.
The baby was born in, the baby was born in July of 2020. Yeah.
It was almost as long the process as the whole baby situation. So
yeah.
When you go into a record, do you walk away from a record with a little bit of a learning experience that you take and put it aside and use that experience for the next album? Or when you're finished with the album, you're finished with the album, and then it's time to move on, and you're not really looking at from that angle?
No, we definitely take stuff. If we're like, hey, this worked really well, we'll use that on the next record. I'm trying to think if anything stands out that we did for this one. No, we didn't really change anything up as far as that goes. We didn't really, do anything too different this time around that was like a previous record and then into this one. This one we just we really like focused on tones and learned a lot about like tone stuff on this past record. And we also did our first Dolby Atmos mix for this record, so that was kind of cool. And we'll probably take that into our next albums. But yeah, there wasn't like anything that we're just like, that was the best thing we've ever done. So we're gonna do that. Things just lined up how they line up, and that's kind of how it is.
When you were finished with the recording, was there a song that you're like, man, I can't wait to play this track live?
I love the song Tightrope. I love the ending of that song. I think it's just going to be a really great live track. That one's awesome. And then
great guitar sounding song.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. And then that song Dark Divide is really neat. I love all like the harmonics and cool stuff in that song. But yeah, I mean, honestly, this is going to be a tough record to play live. I think that's for sure. The songs are extremely difficult. In your studio, you can really just take your time and just kind of go over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Live, you got to nail it. And so we will definitely have we definitely like made it difficult for ourselves, which is pretty standard, I guess.
Yeah. But I think you guys enjoyed those challenges. I mean, I've seen you guys live. You're such a great band to see live, such energy. You make the most complicated stuff seem absolutely seamless. And I think that's why it's so much fun to watch you guys live. So, there might be some learning curves in the beginning, but I'm sure you guys are going to nail it.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
You guys had a lot of guest vocalists on this record. Is there ever a fear that too many guest vocalists will dilute Jake's presence on the record, or no?
No, I think this record just has so much meat to it and is a longer record that I think it just helps kind of break it up. Not to say people don't want to hear Jake scream for an hour, but I think that it helps. I think that it just adds some spice. None of us are fantastic singers, and we had these parts. We had that part in Ancestry where like this needs like soaring vocals, like this needs something here, and we're not doing it. So like we figured it out, and that's why we're like, all right, let's have Jesse do this part. And a lot of times getting guest vocals or guests in general is really difficult because everyone's so busy. But I think we had the advantage of like touring wasn't back 100% yet when we were recording this record. So like we had people who had time. So we could get these guests in line, because usually it's just like, oh, this is such a pain to try and get guest performers on an album. Like it's like pulling teeth. But yeah, everything just lined up really, really well for this record.
Considering that you share vocal duties with Jake, when you look at him from a vocal standpoint, what are his biggest strengths?
I mean, his range is his biggest strength, and also the emotion he's able to put into a take. He's able to like make the listener actually feel something with a scream vocal, which I don't know if a lot of scream vocalists have. Like he just has, his voice can just go all over the place. Like that's his biggest strength. He's very good at, like, you can just sit there with him and go over a part that's maybe like 30 seconds long, and he can do like 5 completely different sounding voices in that time span. Like he is just very good at changing things up, and you can be, all right, you should do this kind of voice here, this kind of voice here, this one here, this one here, this one here, and like he can do it. So like that's his biggest strength for sure.
What song from August Burns Red do you enjoy playing live the most?
That's a good question, because right now we are playing so many songs on this tour we're on. Right now, I really, really like playing the song Martyr a lot. That one's really fun. We haven't played that in a really long time, and it's not in the everyday swing that we're on right now. It's in the every other day swing that we're doing when we're on tour. But yeah, that one's fun to play. It's just a cool song, and the ending's epic. It's great.
One last question for you, and this perhaps is not the question that's on everybody's mind, but it's on mine, and that's all that really matters, because I'm the one asking the question.
Yeah, right.
Have you guys, as a band, sat down with JB and explained to him how much of a health risk and perhaps even a legal liability him wearing flip-flops is?
You know, a lot of us used to wear flip-flops, and I remember specifically, we were playing a show at Gramercy Theater. This was probably like 2009 or 10 in New York City, and our managers at the time came up to me, and they're just like, "Why aren't you wearing your flip-flops?" And I was like, "Because I'm getting shin splints, and I gotta stop." I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So yeah, I mean, he knows, and there's days where like, if they get slippy on stage or something like that, he just kicks them off and goes barefoot. And I think it would be
liability.
Yeah, I think it'd be more of an issue if he was like loading gear. But like I remember maybe it was 2011 on Warped Tour. We were on the main stage that year. And so JB went over to another stage to watch a band play, and that stage manager came up and reamed him out. He was like, "You can't wear flip-flops on this stage." Like, he lost it.
So I guess he doesn't care now anyways. He's just going to do it.
He's doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing his thing. I love it, by the way. I think it's fucking cool. So I just like to tease. Brent, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the time. I really appreciate it. Congratulations on this record. Thank you. It's a phenomenal, heavy, dark, pounding album, but it feels very raw and very organic. At times it feels like you guys just recorded live one take, and that was the emotion that went on.
Thank you. Sorry, I just got something caught in my throat. Yeah, okay, I'm good.
All right, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. All the best for you guys with the album, with the tour, with the shows, and see you soon.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care, man. Bye.
Yep, bye.